Hello, everybody. My name is Sadat Usmani. I am continuing from my previous session, which is available in my previous video. Today, in this session, I will be continuing the reading and I will be talking about section 7.1.2, clause complexing and circumstantial transitivity in clauses. This is a reading of M.A.K. Halliday's Introduction to Functional Grammar. We have seen examples of a few different types of relation used in linking clauses to form clause complexes. So, in my previous session, in which I started the reading of chapter 7 of M.A.K. Halliday's Introduction to Functional Grammar, the chapter 7 talks about clause complex, how clauses are joined together. And in this 7.1.2 section, Halliday is now talking about different types of relation used in linking clauses to form clause complexes. So, a group of two or more clauses is referred to as clause complex. And Halliday says, interestingly, these relations turn out to be manifestations of the same general semantic types that we have already met in another area of the grammar, that is, that of circumstances in the transitivity system of the clause. So, the relationship between clause complexes is now being resembled by that of the circumstances in the transitivity system of the clause. For more information about transitivity system of the clause, uh, the audience listeners may refer to chapter 5, section 5.6. And circumstances augment the configuration of process plus participants in the clause in terms of their either projection or expansion. Now, this is very important in order to understand the clause complexes and different types of clauses. It is important to understand various terminology, terms, and definitions, and projection and expansion. These are also very important concepts when we talk of SFL analysis of the or SFL theory. So these two types of relation correspond in turn to different process types. Projection corresponds to verbal and mental clauses, and expansion corresponds to relational clauses. Projection and expansion are also manifested as the logico-semantic relations that link clauses together to form clause complexes. The manifestations of projection and expansion in the clause and the clause complexes are set out the set out in table 7-2. So here in this, I'm just giving a reading. It is a plain reading of the Halliday's chapter 7, and it will be most of the time word to word reading, because in this right now I am not going to show the slides from Halliday's book, but table 7-2 uh, provides the examples of projection and expansion manifested in clause and clause complexes. In clause, so in clause there is a process and circumstance which relates to that process type, and then clause complex forms logico-semantic type, has a relation of clause logico-semantic type. Now there are two types of relations: projection and expansion. Projection is manifested in the form of a verbal process, or in general verbal clause and mental clause. And in verbal, he says. Say is a verbal process. Verbal here means not verb. Verbal here means what is said. Any process which shows something being said or uttered refers to the verbal clause, and the process is referred to as verbal process, which is manifested by the verb that refers to something being said. So he says. He says is a clause, verbal clause, and circumstances. Now there are different types of circumstances which in general attach to certain types of verbs. In a verbal clause, the circumstance type is refers to either angle. He says, according to him, that's enough. Now, according to him, that's enough is angle. The what the person thinks about something and what says about something. And mental process type in projection refers to he thinks. Again, the circumstance is that of angle. To him, it's too hot. So, what the person thinks is that something is too hot. And from clause complex type, the first one, the verbal one, refers to quoting locution. Locution again refers to something which is said, but now here the relationship is that of he says that's enough. So angle, when we talk of within the clause, there are two types of relations being depicted. He says that's enough. Now in within the clause, the circumstance is that of angle, but at clause complex level, at the above the clause level, it will be a relation of quotation, locution, quoting locution. This is a technical term that Halliday uses. So he says that's enough. There are two different clauses. He says is a complete clause, and that's enough, that is enough, is also a complete clause which can be formed as separate independent clause. He says that's enough. Now he says refers to something. So what he says, that is expressed by an independent clause, that's enough. And this is a locution type of relation at the clause complex level, and within the clause level this will be a relationship circumstance of angle. And in the mental clause, he thinks, to him it's too hot. So here to him, if we are taking, we talk about this relation at the level of clause, then it will be a circumstance of angle. What he thinks, what he thinks about it. But if we take it as at the clause complex level, the same relation will be depicted as reporting idea. So one was quoting locution, and here in the mental type it is reporting idea. He thinks that it is too hot, or it's too hot. Now, the important thing, another one is in mental clause, the relationship is being expressed by the conjunction that. He thinks that it's enough. That's it. It's too hot. And expansion. Now the other type of relation is expansion. Expansion may be of relational type of process, which includes intensive, possessive, and circumstantial. So all three types of relational clauses refer to the projection type, expansion type of relation at the both at the clause level and at the clause complex level: elaboration, extension, and enhancement. So all three types of relation are displayed at the clause complex level. So it will be, for example, she was the leader. This is intensive relational process, and these all examples are provided in table 7-2 of chapter 7 of Halliday's Introduction to Functional Grammar. She was the leader. This is intensive. So intensive means that the subject is being qualified by the adjective, the leader. And so role, the circumstance is that of role as the leader. And elaboration, so this is an relationship of elaboration within expansion. Expansion has three types: elaborating, extending, and enhancing. She was the leader. In this relationship, the clause complex relation, logico-semantic relation, is that of being the leader. Elaborating, the relation is being elaborated. And in possessive, he has a dog, he has a nice smile. This is a relationship of possession. So he has a dog means he possesses a dog. He has a nice smile means that he possesses a nice smile. And relationship within the clause level is at the clause level is accompaniment with a dog. He has a dog means he is with a dog. He has a nice smile, that he is with a nice smile. And extending, this is at the clause complex level, this is the relationship of extension. Now see the difference. So in intensive relation, if we talk about the relation at the clause level, it is a circumstance of role. But if we talk of relation between two clauses at clause complex level, this is the both clauses form the relationship of elaboration. And if it is a possessive relation, like the process is possessive relational process, the circumstance shows accompaniment. And at the clause level, the relationship formed is that of extension. He walked to the market and the dog did too. Second example is he addressed her smiling nicely. And relational circumstantial process, dinner followed the celebration. Now here at the clause level, the relationship is between the circumstantial element and process is that of location, extent, cause, manner, etc. after the celebration. So dinner followed the celebration means dinner was after the celebration. Dinner took place after the celebration. So first celebration was uh, carried out and then dinner followed. So this is a location. So different. This is a time circumstance of time or manner, and similarly location, manner, extent, cause, different circumstantial elements may be used in this situation. But when we talk of the same relation at the clause complex level, it is enhancement. So something is being added to the embellishment to the main clause. So enhancement is they dined after celebrating. Now, after celebrating means after they had the celebration. But when we use it as after celebrating, this clause cannot stand separately, independently. It has to come with the main clause, they dined. They dined can stand independently. So the table shows patterns of agnation that hold between circumstance types in the clause and the logical semantic types of relation between clauses in the clause complex. Now this is important concept that needs to be understood, that within the clause, when we talk of constituency, the relationship is expressed by the agnation. Agnation means what comes together or what comes next to the other. So here, process, participants, and circumstance are the constituent elements within a clause. At the clause complex, one clause has a relationship with the other clause in one way, like hypotactic or paratactic, like equal status, equal status of like both clauses can are independent and are joined together. They can stand separately, independently, or one clause cannot occur without the other clause. So one clause depends upon the other clause, and once these relations are understood, it helps to understand why certain type of relationship has been used in a text. For example, why the independent clause has been used, why a circumstance has been used within a clause, or why two clauses have been joined, why not joined, why two clauses have been constructed as independent clauses joined by a conjunction, whether explicit or implicit, or whether one clause is made dependent upon the other, and how the text is developing, and how this uh, use of clause, simple clause or clause complexes also indicates how the information has been packed within these clauses. And this also shows whether the text is difficult to understand, whether the simple clauses have been used, or more information has been packed in the clause complex, or less information is being conveyed in an easy manner, and how the information is being conveyed. So this all depends upon the genre conventions. For example, scientific discourse has more technical vocabulary to accommodate, and more information to accommodate through less words. So scientific legal discourse, scientific discourse these are generally considered to be more carrying more information in less words. So these discourses become heavily loaded with information, and some other discourses discourse here I mean some texts, in simple words we can say some texts contain less information, so they are easy to understand. Some texts are heavily loaded with information and are difficult to understand, and it all depends upon the conventions of writing within those genres or those types of texts. And the further dimension that Halliday adds to this information packaging in terms of grammatical metaphor, the patterns of agnation involving process type typically involve grammatical metaphor, and a grammatical metaphor is another dimension that SFL has added to the study of linguistic analysis, and this is like a separate topic in its own merit, and Halliday deals with it separately in another chapter, which in this book it is chapter 10. And just for as an example, the circumstance of means how something is done with all her heart in the clause. So each day she prayed with all her heart. Now here this is a clause, this is not a clause complex, and each day she prayed with all her heart. Halliday argues that it is agnate with a non-finite clause linked to each day she prayed in a clause complex. Each day she prayed using all her heart. Now these two, with all her heart and using all her heart, these two are agnate to each other. They convey the same meaning, but in one clause, this is a simple clause, each day she prayed with all her heart. This is a clause, simple clause, in which with all her heart is a prepositional phrase, pray is a verb, and she is participant which is performing the process of praying, and each day also indicates the circumstantial element. And this is agnate with a non-finite clause, using all her heart. Using is non-finite verb, and but we cannot say that using all her heart is a prepositional phrase, because it is a non-finite nominal phrase, but this is actually using all her heart is a non-finite clause which has been joined hypothetically with she prayed. She prayed is an independent clause which can stand by itself, but using all her heart cannot stand by itself. So these are two clauses which have been joined together by using the non-finite using linked to each day she prayed. Okay, so each day she prayed is one clause, and using all her heart is second clause. This is a clause complex. Now, the phrase with all her heart augments the clause circumstantially within the domain of the clause. In contrast, The clause using all her heart expands the clause, relating it to a full-fledged clause rather than to a prepositional phrase or adverbial group, and thereby opening up a clause complex. Here are some additional examples of circumstances serving within the domain of the clause with the suggested agnate clauses within the domain of the clause complex. Now there are, I will stop here, uh, but there are further examples in which the relationship has been explained by Halliday as being whether it is a circumstantial element, whether adverbial phrase or prepositional phrase, or the clause can be treated as a dependent clause and forming a clause complex. So this is again in the like my previous session. It cannot be covered in one session, so I will stop here. We will continue with further reading of the book, and wherever possible I will be trying to explain the main concepts and where we can treat certain element within a clause as circumstance, or whether it should be treated as a clause complex. This is very important as far as understanding the development of a text as a coherent unit, and then why certain choices are made within a clause. So I will stop here. This is I have studied. I have given a reading to the chapter until page 433. So we will continue. Please stay tuned for next for more sessions. Until we meet again. Bye bye.